Well, there's I feel like a Hollywood starlet every time I look in the mirror. Every time I try. Are we good? All right. Devin, George, sit down. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. Welcome to the Brook Township Board of Supervisors Workshop. Start off, say that the meeting is being filmed by Scott Stilson, and tonight we have a few guests with us attending. One will be in person, another will be on Zoom. So let's start off. Okay, we'll go through the announcements, and on the first piece of guys on the all right. Yeah. So then on the announcements, item 2, we will hold an executive session after this. The Board of Supervisors will be meeting after this meeting is ended. All right. Then. At this point, I'll go to an open forum. Any questions from the public on the agenda items that we have? I'll start on this side of the room. Any questions on the things that we're discussing tonight? Seeing nothing on this side of the room? All right, seeing no questions? All right. First order of business tonight, we have a special guest, and that is Police Chief Alvin Wilson. To start off with, I'd like to say I've been hearing very good things about the coverage in Honeybrook Borough, and I'm very pleased to have you attending tonight. So on behalf of the township, thank you for a very good job.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I think there's we've gotten to a point now where we're kind of overflowing. Like the borough and the township, even though we're divided by an imaginary line, I guess it's not imaginary, it's real. But the township and the borough now have kind of grown together. I would probably tell you that as the borough police chief, I'm probably in the township 4 or 5 miles every night. I'm required to be here. If it's not backing up the state because their car is 45 minutes away or an hour away, and it's something that's urgent that has to be handled, then we're here. We also have a lot of things that, I apologize for the radio, but I'm also working. We also have a lot of businesses that are the townships that are actually in the township, but they really affect our borough. One of my requirements of my officers, and I do it, is we have the elementary school. That is our priority. We have to, every shift, you have to make a round through the elementary school. Whether you work a night shift, day shift, afternoon shift, you must go through that. That's in the township, so you're getting, the township's already seeing us. They're already getting us in here. I don't get any pushback from our borough and our borough council. They're very good about that. They understand that that line isn't direct. But to use the elementary school again as something that's really important, if there's an incident at the elementary school, we will be the first ones there. And a school shooting that they all fit in the room that we don't talk about, is over in 3 to 5 minutes generally. If you have to wait for 45 minutes for another response during the day, it's going to be way too late. So you know that also with the blessing of our borough, all our cars are equipped with AR-15s. All our cars have shields in them. We're equipped for the worst case scenario. You look at the borough and you think, wow, that's not a big deal. I've probably had that AR out 3 times in the last year and the shield out. Now, we have not had to use it, but there's been stuff in West Brandywine. There was a barricaded subject here in the township not too long ago. I was the first car there with the state. We're kind of overflowing. So I think it's time that however we do this, we've got to open up a discussion. We've got to open up a door to say, what can we do to not jeopardize the township and also not hurt our borough residents who've really stepped forward? Because having a police department is a tremendous expense. And it's, you sit around and you say, all you see is driving around and writing traffic tickets. I'll give you an example. Last weekend, we're getting fuel at Zook's there. One of my officers sees cars pull into the hardware store. Cars don't pull in the hardware store, it's 11:30 at night. 2 kids with 4-wheel drive vehicles doing donuts in the parking lot of the hardware store. Of course, we respond over there and deal with that. That wasn't something that the state even got called for. It's not even something that ends up on, hey, township residents had that. But it's also something that we patrol the hardware store. We go up there, turn around. That's kind of what we do. And it's kind of overflowed. And I think it's time, instead of, again, kind of ignoring it and saying, hey, township doesn't need law enforcement, the borough covers us once in a while. I think we all need to sit down and say, what's it going to cost all of us, and what expense it's going to be. I don't want to cheat a resident in the borough. We don't. We hit every street every night. We're very active. I mean, if you come through the borough, you'll probably see a police car for work. But there's also residents in the township that think we're theirs. I mean, if I sat at my desk today 6.5 hours and got 3 phone calls that are all township residents that had problems, that I directed them either to PSP, Carnarvon, somewhere else. But I handled them because when they call on the phone, they call Honeybrook Police. They don't call Pennsylvania State Police. They don't call anywhere else. They probably call the township building sometimes, but they're lost, so they're calling us. And we provide a service, so we direct them in the right direction. But it's also, again, something I think we need to step up.
One of the concerns that you and I talked about, in Honeybrook Township, we already have some new developments. And there's potential of even more further development. So the impact that it has on Honeybrook Borough, is that something?
Well, traffic alone is a huge issue that we're going to deal with. The traffic, there's nobody in this room that's going to see that quick fix for 322 and Route 10. It's not gonna happen. When we add all the new residents that we're gonna add in the township, that's going to be more services that the state's going to have to provide. They're not gonna be able to do it. I mean, I'm not here to say the state can't cover what they have, but everybody in law enforcement is limited manpower. So we just don't get out where we need to go. And when all these townships add new developments, it all overflows into us. You know, we're the ones who get called for the prowlers, we're the ones who get, and again, it's the phone call we get at the station that will say, you know what, we'll go out and handle it. Or I'll make a phone call to the state police who will say, we don't have a car, we'll be 2 hours. Do you want to go out and take care of it for you? Well, of course, we go out, we take care of it, and it's done, but it might only be a half-hour call, but it's a half-hour call that I am not in the borough. I am out here in the township, covering the township, and covering a call by the state police. And we don't, you know, then don't jot it down and say, oh, here's a bill to the state police, or here's a bill to the township, because one, the township and the borough are kind of intertwined, and also the state police are my backup too. We're a one-man department a lot of times. Tonight there's 2 of us, but sometimes there's 1. And if I scream on my radio, I usually get state police before I get a local municipality, because they'll come screaming to get to me. So that's where we're at. But I'm just trying to get the talk started. I mean, I think it's, like I said, I think we're probably 5 to 10 years behind the times to get started, but I think it's time to jump into it and say, hey, what do we have to do? And again, the boroughs invested a lot as far as finance to get the department up. And in the last 5 years, logistically, to get a department started, I don't know how you would financially even get it started. I mean, we're talking 500,000 before you can get out the door, and then you only have 1 officer. The township's not in a position where you could even just have 1 guy and just cover it all. It would never happen.
So the follow-up would be that what the board can do is have an opportunity, having heard you tonight, and come back to the borough and say, you know, we'd like to do a follow-up discussion, meet with you again, with the borough council, whatever that next step would be. So that's an action item I'll give to my board tonight to consider.
Right, and I appreciate that. I mean, 2 nights ago I was here 6 hours overtime, and it was a call it was a township call. But that's what we did. So,
On behalf of the board and the residents, we'd like to say thank you for, you know, looking out for the township. And it is noticed and appreciated.
Well, we don't draw that line. I can tell you that. When you see our cart pull somebody over, we don't say, oops, you made it away. You didn't. There's no, oops, you made it across that imaginary line. So, thank you.
Well, thank you for your time coming out tonight.
If anybody has a quick question, I'll answer your question.
Hi, I have gotten 2 calls recently that are scam that are coming from the Huntsburg Borough saying that there's a warrant for my arrest.
Okay.
The first time they did it scared the crap out of me, that I made my husband actually go up to make sure there wasn't because I didn't know.
Correct.
But when I redial back, it dials back to you guys. Do you guys know that there's something going on with
I could set, and I'm not as tech savvy as I should be, but
No,
I can set my phone to read that you will get whatever number I want to get when I dial. We're not calling anybody and telling you have a warrant.
No, you're going to come out and get me before you.
When you see me, that might be too late. But
Is it
but yeah,
Borough Police Department that it calls?
Yes.
Or the Borough Hall? Okay.
Yeah.
It's the police department.
Yeah.
And we've gotten other people that have gotten those calls.
Oh, okay, so I'm not the only idiot that's
Yes.
getting calls.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, given the current population of the township, how many officers would you say in the perfect situation would it take to cover the township if we were to get police coverage?
If you jumped into it with both feet, probably 10 or 12.
Well, what if you guys, I mean, is it a
we
possibility
partner.
for you guys to expand and?
It would be. There's, I mean, without, I think we need to go the next step and make sure I have what I have, but there is a way that we could utilize the facilities we have with a smaller number and maybe stretch out a little bit and expand the rubber band a little bit to get out a little bit further. I don't know, to get the manpower, to be honest, to cover the entire township, it's gonna take a lot. It would take a lot. We only have 2 full-time officers and 2 part-time, and hopefully another part-time by the
What's the
end of the month.
population of the borough that you cover?
Well, there's 1,700 that are there.
And we're talking 8,000 now and possibly, yeah.
Right. The biggest thing in the township is you have even more traffic than we have.
Yeah.
So you have those traffic accidents, you have those things, but also those traffic accidents, I hate to tell you, but I'm covered. Cambridge and 322, it's my car. The Cambridge and Route 10, it's us, you know, and that's where it's starting to be, hey, we're covering it. And the state's not giving us any trouble about it.
Because they don't have the manpower to cover.
They don't have, I came to work the other day and came across a disabled truck at Poplar and 322. I called the state right away and they laughed when I told them what I was doing. And I said, are you sending a car? And they're like, Calvin, you got it, we have nobody for 2 hours. And I'm like,
Wow.
okay, but we had that ice storm. I'll give you another example. We had that ice storm, and every trooper from Emeryville was tied up on Route 30. Every trooper. I did 4 accidents in the township just from the Lancaster County line to the borough on that day of the ice.
Wow.
I couldn't even get to the borough station, and I was getting calls on my cell phone from troopers to say, where are you? You can see your car, where are you? So.
Wow.
Well, just a reminder that we did have a police department out in the township, and after it was disbanded, we did reach out to Harrisburg, and they did a report for us. It was perhaps 2015. So they gave us a projection of what it would take to have a police department, and their approach was a regional police department with 3 municipalities. It provided us some kind of guide, baseline to work from. It's outdated. The pricing, of course, is outdated, but I'm sure we still have a copy of that with the township. Also, West Brandywine provided us with a projection around that time frame. So we do have something to refer back to. Again, if we were to move forward, we have to get that information up to date. And part of our mission statement up there does state that we should, related to land use, police protection, and public works. So there's a gap there that we have to consider.
Never should have got rid of it in the first.
Why did we get rid of it?
We were here.
There were several reasons for that. I would have to, I've heard different things, but from the previous board, I think there was one of the considerations was financial considerations, but I don't have that answer to give you right now.
I mean, you answered some of the questions that I had there. But I just have 2 others. How many vehicles are you presently running, and what's your estimated budget for your
We have 3 cars.
3 cars?
We're going to be getting another one in August, which they just found out now. Because I stretched it out a little bit so that I could have another car. We used to only have 2, now I have 3, and now I've got to order another one in August. And we've set aside enough money that I can do that. So by the end of the year, we'll have probably 3.5. Budget-wise, Ms. Genzano could probably tell you how fast we've climbed.
Yeah, we're a little more than 200,000.
200,000
Yeah.
Or just for police cars.
for your, okay.
Yeah, we're probably closer to 3 now.
Are we?
I would say, well, without jumping, 2023, we're at 3 or 2, with everything, with the cost of benefits.
When we started
Three makes
in
more sense.
2008,
Yeah,
our
or
budget was
3 or 2.
100,000.
That's what I,
So it's just, you know, the more officers, you know, we're providing pensions, we're providing healthcare, you know, that's the big bulk of it.
So Calvin, like a 12-man department that we discussed earlier, what do you think, what kind of budget would that be?
that I can't even, I couldn't even jump in on that.
7 figures?
Yeah, you'd be talking to someone.
Especially since you have to get vehicles and all that too. They have that stuff.
You have to get the vehicles, you also have to get the infrastructure, there's, I mean,
The biggest cost is personnel.
costs, personnel and cars. The Durango I'm driving only costs 40-some thousand, but there's probably another 60,000 in lights and computers and that thing. So you're talking $100,000 in the vehicle. You're talking about 120,000 to 125,000 per employee.
But then you have medical and pension payments.
Correct. The way law enforcement has gone, they have the county, I can get long-winded, but they have the county divided in 3 different sectors as far as county police officers. We're in the west. If you jump out of the west and jump into the central starts at Euclid and goes east. Those guys are making $30,000 to $40,000 a year more than we're making. They're starting officers at $105,000 to $110,000, and to have officers out here in the west, we're not getting. I'll drive 10 more miles and make $30,000 more a year.
And that's a consideration also,
As we move forward.
being
yes.
able to find officers that.
Correct. We've been looking for another part-time officer for a while. And law enforcement in general is just not getting people that want to jump into this field. It's a great career. It has a lot of rewards. You make it what you make it, but we're just not getting a lot of people who are coming into it. The academies have cut their classes in half almost as far as what they're taking, so we're not getting the recruits. And a lot of guys have said, hey, I've got 20 years on me, I'm out of here. It's not worth it.
And the other situation that with, in the state of Pennsylvania,
Everybody's clamoring to get full-timers.
Yeah.
It used to be where guys would, or gals would work a couple part-time jobs until they could find a full-time job. Now, they're all looking for full-timers, so it's really hard to find a part-time officer.
Well, as a nurse, you know, dealing with the public as well, we're burned out. You know, we're tired, we're exhausted. We're not having people come in. We have people leaving, but we're not having nobody come in. And personally, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing and going out there and putting your life on the line.
You're welcome. I can tell you, without doctors, nurses, and teachers, I couldn't do my job. I couldn't switch. And then we have a fire department that I tell those guys, if you ever see me in a fire call, you'll see me stand back. I could not do what they do. So we can't do it if everybody doesn't do it together. I appreciate everybody appreciating me, but believe me, I ride everybody's coattails. I'm not afraid to ask somebody for help, so. All right.
thank you.
All right.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda, we have speakers from
in all your week.
Yeah, yes, yes.
I also invited my colleague,
No.
Rick Trayley.
Now we can't.
That's part of the-
Hello, everybody.
Good evening.
So I'll sort of cut to the chase. I've heard that you're faced with some pretty large-scale development plans, which probably isn't something you're used to on a monthly basis. So I thought I'd just tell you a tiny bit about natural lands and the work we do with municipalities. I don't want to take too much of your time in a work session. If you're not familiar with natural lands, I think you are a little. You've met Carol. Hopefully you know my colleague Jack Stepperud. We've been around since the early 1950s. We're a nonprofit land conservancy. We own and manage 42 preserves that are open to the public, comprise about 23,000 acres. We also hold conservation easements on another 466 properties, about 25,000 acres. We work sort of east of the Susquehanna River in southeastern and northeastern Pennsylvania, as well as in Salem and Cumberland County, New Jersey. But we're also a pretty practical land trust, and we know that communities can't buy it all, that many landowners see their land as their retirement package. They can't necessarily afford to preserve it. So we help municipalities through open space plans, trail plans. We help them learn how to manage natural areas in a sustainable and cost-effective way. And we help them write development regulations. I'm aware of the great work that Honeybrook Township has done in ag preservation. I know John Goodall at the Brandywine Conservancy. I'm aware of some of those conservation easements and the agricultural best management practices in your township. My colleague Jack Stepperud helped preserve the Lawrence property, about 155 acres that was transferred to the Bureau of Forestry. I looked at your codes a little bit, and you have some really strong conservation standards in those codes. So I guess I'm offering that one way we could help you would be to review larger scale development plans against those conservation standards. Your engineer is absolutely the best person to be looking at road profiles and sewage and water, but we can complement their work by looking at tree preservation, lowering the impacts to wetlands or streams, a layout of the development so the footprint is the least intrusive as possible. I wish I could eliminate traffic, but I don't carry that magic wand. We usually start by walking a property with a site inventory in hand. That's something you require. If you don't already have that from a developer in our office, you can generate some more general maps. You are part of a landscape called the Brandywine Christina Cluster, and our organization and many other nonprofits have a little bit of subsidy money to work, so I might be able to offset some of our costs. And I could certainly show up and look at a development plan and give you my initial thoughts at no cost. Both Rick and I have done that for townships for years. One of the first plans I worked on that you can see in the ground is Weatherstone in West Vincent, which is really high density. A lot of small singles, and there's about 200 acres of open space on that 300 acre tract. But more commonly, we're looking at subdivisions that aren't quite that dense. So we offer that if you're in need of help. Many communities can pass those costs along to a developer once it application is filed, just like you're probably passing engineering costs on to the developer. I'm not sure. We do write ordinance language for townships, but if someone's filed a plan, they're sort of have rights under your existing codes, and you have some really good standards in there now. So my goal would be to help you enforce what's on the books right now. And then think going forward, would you need anything tweaked? And I think we're mostly here to take questions or see what your biggest concerns are.
Thank you, Ann. At this point, I will open it up to
if a property, who I like to bring with me on sidewalks or features like that, if you're looking for someone to do an independent certified, wetlands certification, we don't have that in-house. However, your ordinance gives the supervisors the right to seek a certified wetlands specialist to counter a developer's submission. We do have the skill, though, to suggest planting and buffering to, mitigate the impact to those wetlands beyond what the federal government requires, with regards to a permit for fill or something like that.
do we have any questions from the people who are
Your zoning code, which I don't have on my screen right now, I can send at John's email, I can send John that language. I just read it at about 2 o'clock. I've been in another meeting since then, so I haven't committed it to memory, but I was really impressed that it said you could seek an outside expert. So we're not certified wetlands professionals. You could hire one, but we are ecologists, and if a wetland boundary is on a map, we're going to look for that in the field, and we're going to suggest ways to buffer and keep development of healthy width away from that. Specifically, we like to have some good land that isn't wetlands, and that is landscape with native plants between the wetlands and any site disturbance for construction.
And what is your,
natural gas.
So Karen,
So,
the request would be if if we're to be interested in getting an opinion from the Natural Land Trust and have them give us some, if, as we said, that the all wetland certified specialist is something that we might want to consider. So that's why we're just asking some of those questions now before it's too late.
Yeah, I mean, I don't trust, none of us in this township trust this developer at all. It should never pass zoning, period, you know, and now, you know, we're coming back at them, in regards to, you know, issues that we have concerns about, so.
well, I did read the zoning order, and one reason I followed up is I was somewhat hopeful, because the order said that the district was eligible for multifamily housing, but the order was clear that in no way was it stating that, and the developer. Has been made. All they're saying is he doesn't have to build, he's not limited to single-family detached homes. And in some ways, if the homes can be closer together, you have more ability to stay away from environmental issues.
Maybe. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah.
It's Kim Rumble.
Yes.
Hi, good evening, John. Thank you. So I just wanted to comment on, and I apologize, Ms. Hutchinson, is it Ann?
Yes,
It
yes.
was Ann, thank you, I wrote that down, okay. So, and you may not have an answer, and this might be rhetorical for the moment, but many of us in the township have run into the fact that there's certain zoning provisions because we're all zoned agricultural and not residential. So that might be an interesting concept or something to think about of what's going on Chestnut Tree. Just the fact, I don't know how that's zoned there, I know where we are is agricultural, but I don't know if that's something to be thought of with what we're talking about. It seems there's certain rules depending on if it's residential or agricultural. If it's agricultural, I don't know.
I haven't reviewed this application. The zoning hearing board order says that the property is located in a mixed-use district, which is a type of residential zoning, but I haven't seen a plan, and I looked at your codes quickly. The wetlands statement says, when a jurisdictional determination of wetlands is required, the township may hire a qualified consultant to review the delineation and recommend revisions at the applicant's expense. So that's a great standard the township already has.
Did we?
No.
So,
We didn't do that?
Has not been an action item for us.
so it wouldn't cost the township anything if the township supervisors decided to hire an independent person to do a wetland study?
Assuming the developer has filed a preliminary plan, and I don't know that he has. He has?
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
And he filed several plans, which is what was found in the see, right?
I didn't realize that.
I mean, he filed 2 plans, right? And that was where they found the discrepancy?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So I guess where we stand right now, there's a few good points that you called out for us. So what we'll do is, since this is a workshop, meeting, the board will deliberate and decide whether we can go forward, if this is an area that we need to examine, in what direction we should go with this. And I would be interested in having that opportunity, to walk the wetlands with you to see what's out there, because I've only had the opportunity to drive by and also to see what's on the map, but I want to be convinced as well that, we've made that effort. So if there's any, I have one other question, Shane, go ahead.
Yep, just one real quick question. The buffer zones for the wetlands, that would be a do not disturb area during construction also, right? Or is that just after construction?
Well, right now, if you have a preliminary plan that is filed with the township, you're limited to what your zoning code requires, which is a 10-foot setback. We can recommend more. We could see if there was some way to fit a similar number of homes in a way that gave a wider swath between the homes and the wetlands. But the letter of the law is whatever is in your codes now, plus any other standards. I haven't read all of it carefully. I was just sort of looking through it this afternoon, and I haven't seen the plan. Sometimes if there's an opportunity to shift things around, a developer might be willing, especially if the area is soggy and he doesn't want to get his equipment stuck, or it's steep and it costs more to grade.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Rick, I appreciate your time, and it was very informative. Thank you very much. I hope that we'll be in touch with you shortly.
Thanks so much for your time.
You have a good evening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night. All right, so let's move on ahead on the business for tonight. So, okay, we're up to the third item, the discussion of the township holiday schedule. So, Warren, on that particular item?
Sure, just quickly, our township policy manual, which is several years old, just has stated federal holidays as they were at that point. I just think it would be reasonable to see a change to the policy manual just to say, as frequently updated by federal standards. So we can either pick federal holidays, or I would recommend following the Chester County holiday schedule. That way, if holidays are added or changed, we don't have to actually do it.
Okay. So we can take a action item.
And if you're interested, we'll just make it part of next week's.
Okay. I feel that that's something we should look at. All right. We'll add that to our agenda for the board's meeting. Next item, we have the zoning hearing board solicitor discussion. So I'll turn it back to
Well, this is something that you tabled at the reorg meeting.
yes.
So, I believe the board's in agreement to have Beth Cole continue as our solicitor. She was appointed, she has changed firms, and that you're gonna appoint, what was our township soliciting firm, Apartment Valerio Lutz, as our zoning board solicitor, because Beth Cole moved to the firm that the current former zoning hearing board solicitor belonged to, so it's a conflict. They can't belong to the same law firm. So this would continue to have Beth serve us as our solicitor, and then have Hartman's firm, who has been our township solicitor for the past several years, take over zoning hearing board duties. So there's wording in there, in your agenda packet, again, with the zoning hearing board's approval, and you'll see it's, I'm kind of going ahead, but we will also appoint conflict counsel, just in case there's going to be a conflict with pre-existing issues, which we will be having with our LI issue, that we already have conflict counsel in place, and then we don't have to worry about finding it. This is going to be, again, at the zoning hearing board. So my recommendation is to appoint Chris Hartman's firm as our zoning hearing board solicitor.
Do the residents understand what just happened there? Not really.
No.
Okay. The solicitor for the zoning hearing board, he will no longer be our solicitor.
Yeah.
He's stepping aside. The firm that was currently serving as our township solicitor will be serving in that capacity for the zoning hearing, the zoning solicitor. And then Beth, who worked for the Hartman firm, has accepted a position with another law firm, Arlie Snyder. So she will be representing Huntingburg Township, but with a different law firm. That's the change that has been
For the
made.
board. She'll be the solicitor for the board.
For the board, yes, for the township solicitor. And then the additional item, you said that a conflict?
So yes, so part of the issue is if there's a conflict where our zoning hearing board solicitor working with the firm, or in the case that we are forecasting here, Chris Hartman's firm has been working with the board with this line master plan. It would be a conflict because he has been on the privy to personal information and executive level information between the board and this agreement, and having a removed conflict counsel will remove that out in the process.
So we're looking for another attorney from a different firm, is that what I heard?
Correct, and Chris Hartman has recommended a firm here, I will tell you in a second, because that would be for your agenda item for next week. So again, we're going to go two words with one. So give me 1 second. So yeah, Chris Hartman's firm is recommending conflict counsel. So anytime there would be a potential issue. And we may find this occur the first year, just as we have many processes that have already hit us that will eventually work through the zoning hearing board. So it's just better just to remove any of those preconceived issues here.
Okay. And then the conflict attorney is not a substantial cost for the township, it's just as needed?
It would be, correct, so it would be no different than paying the zoning hearing board solicitor. It's the same, it would be the same rate, yes.
And it would be on an as-needed basis, that part.
Correct, what would happen is if a zoning hearing board application comes in and is turned over to the zoning hearing board solicitor, if he looks at it and believes that there's a conflict, he will notify the township in writing through the administration and recommend conflict counsel. And since the zoning board, hearing board would approve this of the solicitor firm and the conflict, it would automatically go into the conflict. We would try to have to find some counsel at the last minute.
Since we adopted the budget for 2023, there's not going to be a substantial change in the line item for our legal services then, because there's two different accounts for that.
So correct, so we have general funds that are for township board of supervisors solicitors, and then we have a separate line item for zoning hearing board. The cost of the zoning hearing board solicitor firm is based upon previous year zoning hearings, which are approximately 10 to 12, so we associate that established cost, but Hartman's firm has agreed to keep the funds, the per hour cost the same, so there will not be any material increase by going to another firm.
All right. Thank you, Warren. Because I just must have tapped this lost. One further question, I guess I don't see on the agenda, the appointments for the zoning hearing board have been postponed to February, so we'll be making those appointments next week, correct?
Correct, so that is noted on next week's board packet.
Yeah.
So after we conduct, line item number 8 is the review of the draft agenda. So obviously that's where you would have any discussion about next week's board motions, and that would be where the zoning hearing board appointment conversation would occur.
All right, very good. All right, the next item, we have a discussion of the Environmental Advisory Committee, EAC. So we made a motion, voting members. We discussed this a few months ago. We did have a resolution asking for the adoption of an alternate energy plan for the township, partly aligned with the Chester County Climate Action Plan initiative that has reached out to you in the county. What we were looking for in this environmental advisory committee is a committee of 5 people that municipalities have used across Chester County to assist primarily the Board of Supervisors on environmental issues, that we would request the EAC to look into those matters. Also, if there's environmental questions that they could assist the Planning Commission, that they would be able to help Planning Commission as well. So we did come up with a draft ordinance. We made some modifications to it. So my question to the board is, do we want to address this item in the next week's board meeting?
Are you saying then that we made a resolution to have an EAC? Is that what I heard you say?
We had an ordinance. An ordinance, that's what we reviewed in October.
Right, but last month you had referenced to the resolution that was signed.
And then the resolution I was referring to, that we have a request for the alternate energy action, and it's requesting that there would be a committee and the potential, if needed, consultants. That's where I pulled that word in for.
That was for renewable energy, right? Not
That's
for
all.
environmental.
It's, yes. So we have environmental and advisory committees to assist us in pursuing those action items on that resolution.
So I'm confused. The
Okay.
resolution was for renewable energy?
Yes, that's
Okay.
what's approved in April.
So right now, we're talking about something not renewable energy, right?
It's a part of the overall environmental issues that we're dealing with, that whether we would want to consider, for instance, this development's coming out to request solar farms, or in the case of what I confirmed with the DR Horton, that they're doing the EV charging units in those buildings. So that's part of the environmental initiative.
So is there something that we think is missing or not being dealt with that we want to,
Yeah,
I
there's.
mean, because there are, like I know Mike had mentioned last month about how, in our Saldo, there are requirements, to have different environmental issues reviewed, so.
Just as we just pointed out in section A of the ordinance, provides for a wetlands expert to double check the wetlands delineation.
Yeah.
At the cost of the applicant.
So we
So we have pretty strong
We
ordinances
did, yes.
already on the
Built
books.
So we have an advisory committee to do the follow-up on those action items. For an example, we have a group across northern Chester County, and they're looking at different ways to help all municipalities in meeting some of the environmental goals, as far as improve the reduction in stormwater and all those things. I see it as the board does not have the expertise in environmental issues, that we have an advisory group of residents, interested residents, to investigate, research, perhaps attend some of the meetings across the county that we can't attend, and come back with recommendations. Because there's no authority given to them, they're just providing us with some advice on what direction the county's going, if there's opportunities that we may be missing out on.
So we have the ability right now to use someone like a Natural Lands Trust that are in fact experts,
Yes.
that are actually trained and have some background in education.
Yes.
But you're saying that you want to create a secondary group of residents that are interested.
Not necessarily secondaries, give the residents the opportunity to drive this, to participate in this under the direction of the Board of Supervisors.
So you don't feel like the residents are able to participate by coming to the regular meeting?
Well, we get good advice from the Parks and Recreation. We get good advice from land preservation. So this is an area, a gap, that there's emerging issues that are occurring all around us. And from the trend that I've seen across the county, this is something that numerous municipalities have already been pursuing. Valley Township has been doing it for over 12 years now.
I'm not sure that I see that same gap.
Are we looking to address this next week, or are we looking to table it? Not everything can be covered under salary.
I think that we have so many different things going on right now with other various issues that I'm not sure that it makes sense to
Get more information.
get more all of something else to divert our attention to something else to make sure that it's correct. There's a lot of things that we're trying to take care of, right, with the new development coming in.
Well,
And-
that would be one of the primary reasons to do that with the development
Natural
coming in.
Lands Trust, I think that was very helpful. And I think that we learned now that Section 8 of the ordinance does allow for a wetlands expert. That person has an education in that
Yes.
and can do it.
Well,
Why don't we take a step and see where that goes next?
that would be a step in the direction. As far as the EAC, it's just a matter of, are we moving forward in that direction? We have been approached by the Northern Chester County EAC. They would welcome us to, their belief is that we have a lot of environmental sensitive areas out this direction. Plus, we're in a region that we're participating with the other communities. It may be beneficial, not just for them, but for us as well.
Oh, really?
So my question is, do we want to continue this, pursuing this for next week's discussion, or do we move on from that? That's really where we're at this point. If we do move on, I can take the ordinance, resubmit that ordinance, correct it so that it meets whatever we need, and otherwise we just move on to others. That's the question.
I think if we're going to pursue that, we need to all be looking at the ordinance together and
Well,
have input on it together.
That's what we did, we
And-
submitted it for the three of us to review.
All have input into that ordinance and have it looked at by multiple people that are,
Well, what you received was a draft, and it's,
We
an ordinance is
received
not
a
going to
draft.
go right through from us. It would have to go to our solicitor, so
but
that
I
would be
think
proper review.
we should all have input into.
Certainly.
what's in the ordinance.
So why don't we take another look at that last draft of the ordinance?
Yeah.
And then see if we want to talk to Beth about it.
Mhm.
And then, because if this moves forward, there has to be some parameters of,
Correct.
how are we gonna, how are people going to get on the committee?
That's,
Are they gonna submit a resume? Are they gonna, because
What are the
anybody can Google.
qualifications?
well, that's, yes, that was covered in that ordinance. There's qualifications, and what I did is I pulled a sample ordinance from another municipality. So there's a template out there where we can start from fresh and pull from there. And what I was doing is doing changing the name of one municipality to ours, and then taking out a few items that we didn't need. But to your point, it would cover qualifications as well as duration of the term, whether it's a 4-year term, comparable to what we're doing as far as appointments. We go through the same process that we do for all other appointments for other committees.
I think we need to really consider that ordinance together.
Yes? Yeah. All right. So you'll get that in an email.
Okay.
All right then. Let's move ahead here. All right, we have a heating system discussion. So I'll turn to township manager again on that question.
Sure. For those that aren't aware, the administrative side of our building has geothermal, and this portion of the township building has a traditional heat pump system. Since I started with my tenure here, we have had the geothermal side of our heat pump, both for air and heat, fail repeatedly over almost every single month. We are losing glycol, which is, think refrigerant, 2.0, on a monthly basis. Last month, we started losing the standard refrigerant, and we don't know whether it's being lost inside or externally. The geothermal system typically can be wells or pits. We utilize pits, which run under our parking lot. Concern with the loss of glycol is that it's not leaking out inside, which we don't believe it is. It's leaking out into the environment. So, working with Frayless, who is our contracted service for HVAC, and they're the ones that actually installed the geothermal. They gave us a couple options. They can hire an external company that can use sonar to try to see if they can pinpoint the leak in the well. But it's so small that they probably won't be able to find it, and that's a $3,000 cost. They're going to have to dig up the parking lot, which can be anywhere up to $4,000 just for the dig. That's not going to account for the replacement. Then if they do find it, they have to run a repair on it, which is up to $1,200. Typically that means an evaporator coil is gone, that's $3,000. And so we're looking at $11,200. They recommended doing a commercial mini split system, which is actually more efficient and greener than the technology of the geothermal. So they recommend a Lennox system. The initial quote was about $23,000. However, they reached back out to the Lennox rep and they lowered the price for about $20,000, $845. That proposal includes the installation, but more importantly, the environmentally safe removal of the existing equipment. They will eliminate the geo lines, the air handlers. It's a 10-year warranty. It will replace the same geothermal units. It will be leveled and with all the inspection fees. We did not budget for it this year, but our capital improvement fund does have enough funds to do that. So I'm just looking for input from the board. I would recommend just moving forward to the replacement. And if you're interested in that, then I can see if they are Coast Guard vendors. You have to look out to bid. I would just ask that the board consider moving on sooner than later. Not because we don't have to, but because we are still having a black hole leak, and the concern is that it's going out.
So when you say the funding is coming from the fund, is that where we have $300,000 for $350,000?
So the capital improvement fund is secondary to the general fund. That typically will take large capital projects over $5,000 out. This year we are utilizing some of those funds to buy the new F-550 truck and also the skid steer. Currently, our reserves as of January 1st is $921,000 in change. Expensing out the vehicles for this year, we would look at having a fund balance of about $657,000. That's purchasing the truck, purchasing the skid loader. So the fund is still healthy. To your statement, I believe if you're asking if we've invested some of the funds in depleted, we have already 5%, so we are looking at making probably $50,000 back this year to this fund alone, so that will far pay for itself if we just elect to use the investment funds as they turn back out. Just as a side note, we have made sure that our fund balances, even with those investments, always allow us to face such emergencies. So I just need some direction of whether we want to start digging or, put a more greener solution in, which is, I think, is the more advisable way to do that.
On the geothermal system that we had, the system deteriorated, or what was
So it was new technology, it was new green technology in the mid-2000s. So geothermals were still being
still evolving?
Evolving, correct. And that was the reason why, when this building was built, the township did want to put in green systems.
Yeah.
But they understood that the traditional way to do it would be actually digging wells, which would probably double or triple the cost. And to make all of those bays would have really blown the budget. So they decided that they believed in green technology enough to do it on part of it. We dug trenches, which come under our driveway because the pad site and just the overall size of this municipal building is on about 2 acres, so there was nowhere else to put it. So they were trying to go green, and the reality is this replacement program, while it's a traditional mini split heat pump, it is more efficient and actually has won some efficiency awards over the past year for the type of mini split systems that they are.
So I think we did get money's worth for about 12 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, it's only by trying at the infancy stages of any new technology that you help advance it, right? So they were telling that we're about the first series of anything, we wait until series 2, but the reality with geothermal is still evolving. But yes, to answer your point, we did a green initiative. It has served us well. It's just at the point where I think if we don't take a step, we're going to be doing more environmental harm and kind of backstepping a little bit. I think we've utilized our system as far as we can go.
Comments from the board? Yeah, well, it
Sounds
sounds like
like the mini split makes sense.
Yeah, so there's 3 separate quotes in here. Some are higher, some are lower. I did straight up ask which one. There's a quote for $15,000 as an Napoleon system. One is $19,500 for a carrier, and the next comes in more expensive by a few $100, but that is the most efficient unit, according to the manager over at Frameless. So, and I think he believed in it so much that he did get it after a few $1,000s more across the cost. Because we definitely want to install an estimate that we can to get with us like that. So if I hear that the board is in agreement, then I can put it up to the floor next week to have a motion to see to do that replacement. And then we'll work on seeing whether the co-stars and get you a firm price and make sure that you guys know your exact on it.
I think you're in agreement?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. All right. So we move on to item 7, public works staffing discussion. I say I'm sorry for the family of the Given family. Doug Given had passed away, and we are now looking at, I guess, for staffing.
So Doug Gibbons had worked for the township in the public works department at least since 1985. He had retired many years ago, but for the last 8 years, we have contracted him to do our roadside mowing, the large John Deere that goes through our township. From springtime all the way through fall. Additionally, we have to contract out the mowing of Humboldt Park. That is several $100s per mow. And finally, we have inherited mowing of a several $100-year-old cemetery that you cannot get large equipment in, so it's push mower.
Yeah.
That's also kind of, contracted out. Don Johnson, I thought he was here 47, he actually looked, he's here 49 years of service. He has acknowledged the fact that at some point he's going to look to actually retire. And based upon that information, you know, we had agreed perpetually last year, and part of our budget was to put some additional funding in to bring up someone currently to assistant director of public works, and Don could start transferring that knowledge. Passing with Mr. Gibbons, looking at that cost of 6 months of a part-time employee at $25 an hour. Don had been on the lookout for someone that might want to do township government, work in public works. It's not a very highly sought-after job. And we have found a gentleman that actually does most of the work on our large equipment. Those large equipment bills you will see next week. Just standard maintenance on some of our loaders, about $2,000 a year just for annual service. So we would bring upon this gentleman as a potential employee, we would save probably $30,000 to $40,000 a year in outsourced maintenance costs. The gentleman that we are looking at is married with a few children. He is a military vet. He has earned his mechanical certification in heavy equipment, and while he does not have a CDL, he would be willing to get one materially at his own cost on his probationary time. So looking at the overall costs, taking into account that we would bring someone on additionally, we could start taking over the mowing of Humboldt Park, which is going to save $10,000 a year. We could assign individual road crew members to take turns doing the mowing. And in the wintertime, we farm out a plow anyway, so we could actually cease doing that. We have enough vehicles to do that. In addition, we could have a mechanic on site, and that would allow Don later this year to maybe determine if we add on a fourth member who he believes could potentially be a good assistant director of public works, so we could then start that exchange of information. The reality is we probably need 5 years of an assistant to have Don totally give every single bit of knowledge that this is not about the standards of the road. He knows every culvert, every ditch, where things flood, you know, where the snow blows over, and you have to use heavier equipment. And so while I don't think whoever replaces Don in a handful of years will have that same knowledge immediately, I think if Don can not only share the institutional knowledge, but you know, the reality of the leadership roles of getting people to do hard work, maintaining the roads and the municipal buildings that do all this work. I think it's advantageous to look at it now. We are looking at taking on an additional township park, potentially 2 if we look at Brook. So now you're looking at 3 parks that we have to maintain, and it would only make sense, and as we talked about in our budget discussions, that this year we started showing how we want to fund all of those individual funds, including the rec fund. So if we have to start maintaining the parks or updating the parks, that is appropriately funded, and we could start taking, you know, partial salaries out of those funds and coming for the work that they will do. So at this point, I'm just saying if the board is interested in looking at bringing on a full-time employee in lieu of just adding that $10,000. Obviously, there's going to be some additional costs on medical and pension, but I would say looking at what we pay for contracting services and what Brook has been doing, you know, the additional outlay would be, you know, $10,000 to $20,000. Obviously, we've already set our budget for this year. So if you would want to do that, we could just have a motion to start that hiring process. And instead of doing a budget resolution change that we had done earlier, it's recommended that we can make any material line changes to several different line items. And this, as it comes to fall, where we know where we align, we can just make one motion to ensure that the budget at the end of the year meets those accounting standards.
Yeah, at this point, I think, from my perspective, I think we do have to act on, you know, the leadership role for road manager. It's getting to that point, we have to.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Because we don't know when.
Yeah.
Correct, he's not, I don't think Don knows, but, you know, Don has contact with road crew members from the Tri-County, because literally we get one part of the county, we have to drive reverse on that county. So Don knows all of these employees, and, you know, we've talked about this since I started day one, about looking at transfer of knowledge, and this is the first person Don walked over to the administration side for a few months and said, I'd like to introduce you to this one. Yeah.
All right, I agree with you.
Okay, so it'll be a motion that we can start the process. I definitely will get you some budgetary numbers and kind of show you where the budget would align. And again, we don't have to, just have to make the approval to start the hiring process. And then come near the end of the year, we can do a budget resolution to align those items as we see fit.
Okay, I see that Mike Ryan joined. Welcome, Mike.
Yeah, so Mike is here to go over the engineering issues on the agenda, so he is on our clock, so I don't know if you want to just go to what Mike has to address to the board for next week's meeting, and then the board can definitely answer some questions. I will note that we do have Stephen from Natural Lands Trust here who has applied for the Rec and Park position, and I think he'd like to, I don't know if you want to say some words or just say hello, or just he kind of want to stop by, but he's an agenda item next week, but let's be mindful. I would ask, let's go through Mike, and then if Steve would like to speak, or you can, we all said hi.
All right, good. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, hi Don and everyone from the board. I just wanted to go over a couple items on your business agenda for next week. And I'm not sure if anyone is there in the audience for any of these topics. If someone is, they can speak up. But I'll just forward you item number 4 on the regular business agenda, which is Keystone Court expansion. This is the mobile home park expansion that we talked about at several meetings. We got preliminary plan approval in the past. They submitted a final plan that went before the planning commission at their last meeting. So you'll have 2 waivers on your agenda for action next week. One of which was recommended for approval by the planning commission, and one of which was not. The one that was not was a reduction in the number of required evergreen plantings. There was a requirement for 129 trees. I believe the applicant was proposing 94. The planning commission recommended denying that waiver. In turn, the applicant responded and said that they would increase the number to 102 and come before you as a board with the waiver request, looking for action for approval on that. So that will be on your agenda for action next week. For your consideration, one of the things that going along with the planning commission recommending denial of the waiver, there may be opportunities on the property where those additional trees could be planted. I did look at the plan, I pulled the plan today, and I think there's opportunities that they could fit the required 129 trees on the property. So that is a consideration that you could go with in your motion next week. Another option that you do have, and I've done this in other municipalities, is if not all the tree plantings are provided, that there would be an opportunity to provide the plantings perhaps at another location, either at a township park or a township lot, or fee in lieu. That's another option that has been considered in other municipalities. So I think all those things will be before you for possible consideration with that waiver. Finally, there is a recommendation for final plan approval conditional on our last review letter. So we do have the 2 waivers for the landscaping and some other outstanding items that are still outstanding. And again, that would be up for action under item 5. So if you had any questions about Keystone Court before I move to the next one, I just offer that at this time.
No question. Board?
Okay.
We have a comment, yeah, Mike.
Just one thing.
Okay.
If they put in a few fewer trailers, they'll be able to fit in all the required trees.
Mhm.
is there's an extension request in time for DR Horton, the development that you're fully aware of for Arbor's Glen. They're requesting a 90-day extension, which is typical to do plan revisions and get outside agency approvals and the sort. Just so that the board is aware and the public, we have had 2 Zoom conferences with the attorney for the developer, mostly to discuss the zoning comments that we had in our last review letter. So our understanding is that they need the additional time to address those comments based on the feedback that we've given them and some of the questions that we've answered. So that would be a typical 90-day extension request that I would recommend the board consider extension to allow them time to address those conditions or address those issues. Similarly, number 7 is upward investments. That's also another land development that we had commented on that already. They're requesting additional time again to address our review comments in our review letter and gain outside agency approvals and the sort. So again, that would be a typical request that would come for you next week. 8, 9, and 10, just so you're aware, these are all variance applications that were submitted from 3 different applicants. Number 8 is the Ben Real variance, which is 2707 Cambridge Road. This is a variance request that essentially would allow the creation of a new lot in the ag district. Your requirements for the ag district are creating a 1 to 2 acre parcel for residential lots. They're proposing a 3 acre lot, so it's obviously larger than the 2 maximum acreage that is required. In addition, there is a requirement in your ag that no more than 10% of the parent tract can be developed off of the original tract. So they would also need a variance for that as well, just because they don't have enough acreage to qualify for that 10%. So it's those 2 variances that come into play. They're also looking at doing an accessory dwelling unit on the property, so that variance also plays into that as part of their project before the zoning hearing board. So planning did review that. They took a position of no position on those issues. Are there any questions related to that one?
I have none.
Okay. The next one is Christian Stoltz Goose. That's a variance request for 410 Broad Street. This is much simpler. He owns just slightly under 20 acres in the ag district. He'd like to create a 10 acre lot that would comply with the ordinance, and the remaining balance is 9.9 acres, which is just below the 10 acre minimum. So it would be essentially a de minimis violation of that requirement. Planning Commission again reviewed that, and they recommended support for that application. So that's a little more straightforward. There's no development proposed at this time. It's just the creation of the 2 ag lots. Lastly, just moving right along, it would be the Ryan Homes variance. That's in Chestnut Ridge Phase 2 and 3. Just for your background, Warren and I met at the request of the developers and the builder. Their request had to do with going with a different type of loan model than what they originally planned. And their variance request on several of the lots, and that's annotated in your memo, which lots those would impact, would be a reduction of the rear yard setback from 35 feet, which was the setback that was under the original zoning district that the plan was approved under, which is not our current zoning. It's the old zoning from the previous ordinance, with 35 feet. They're looking at going with a 25-foot setback for the rear yard only. The other setbacks will all be complied with. All of the lots that they're requesting relief on are not built at this time, nor any of the adjacent lots within phases 2 and 3 built on at this time, which was one of our concerns. They actually all butt against open space, so there's no impact to anyone that's already living within Chestnut Ridge in phase 1. These are all open space abutting lots. We also had a concern about stormwater management. We did have them submit evidence from their engineer that the stormwater facilities are designed to address the revised house layout that they're looking at. So that was one of the concerns we discussed in our meeting. This did go before the Planning Commission. They did recommend an opposition to it in a 4-to-1 vote. And And again, that'll be before you for action at your next, at your meeting next week. Any questions on that?
So, Mike, on that, you said that we're not getting a recommendation to support.
Right, their recommendation was 4-1 to oppose. There was one dissenting vote that was a vote for high opposition vote.
Just concerned about this, so they're reducing the setback, and,
Yeah, ironically, if you want a little bit of my own opinion from an engineering standpoint, my suggestion to you would be to consider a neutral position or a no position on this. I don't see an immediate negative impact on the adjacent neighbors. There was a concern and a valid one presented by the planning commission related to the ability of constructing decks in the rear yard behind the house. That there might be some restriction there because of the reduced setback. However, the one thing I do want to note is that tract is now currently zoned neighborhood residential, which actually provides a 25-foot setback in the rear yard. So their request for variance is actually in compliance with their current zoning. However, because the plan went through in the previous zoning, their variance request is based on the original zoning in place at the time, at time of application and approval of the development. So I just wanted you to have that background. I think that's important, and I think it also plays into how the board would take a position on this application.
all right. Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome. I don't think I have anything else. There's the standard release requests, number 14 and 15 are release requests for Chestnut Ridge phases 2 and 3. And also an oldie but a goodie, Brandon Diamond's project, which goes back, ironically back to the mid-2000s, is recommended for release as well. So we're trying to close out an old project that fell off the radar a little bit from the township's file keeping. So we're trying to close that one out as well.
So on that,
Sorry?
item 14, so the partial security release, what phase is that?
That's for phases 2 and 3, John. They did some paving work for portions of the property down there with the road system. The request is primarily for the 2 applications of binder that they put down for paving in the development. So that's the majority of the release. There's also 2 level spreaders that were put in for stormwater that was included in that release back in that. I think it's number 12 and 13 of the 2 cases back there. So that's what the request entails.
Anything else from the board?
Okay.
Mike, thanks
Very-
for the update.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll see you next week. Take care.
Have a good night, Mike.
You too. Take care. Good night.
Good night. Are we looking at the remainder of this agenda, or?
So now we're looking at the remainder. I would just ask that, just for Stephen's time, he is listed under, let's see, number 11.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Longnecker had put an application in.
Yes.
For the open position of rec and park. He worked for a natural lands trust for 19 years. He's going on 19 years, so he's a coworker of Ann.
Yes.
We have spoken 2 or 3 times now. I believe he's a good candidate. He obviously deals with open space, his project management skills. I believe would be helpful in facilitating, some of the projects that the board has given Rec and Park to look into, to maybe take them into, the next steps of finding solutions so we can start building, facilities, whether that's the ice
Yeah.
trail.
Have we shared the request with the members of the Parks and Rec?
We have not, because the appointment is based upon the board of supervisors.
Yeah. Just if we could send it to the committee note and ask for any comment, I'll say we need it before next week. I don't think there'd be any problem, but just to give them the opportunity to know who's joining. Yeah. if you want to spend a moment to speak about
Put on the
yourself.
spot, or-
Yeah, it's fine.
Good.
Chester County native, moved out Honeybrook in height of the pandemic, sight unseen, bought my home, and I found a haven. And working for Natural Lands, I'm committed to open space. I actually do their facilities. So any structure that resides on any of these 23,000 acres is my problem. I have a love for sports, volunteerism. I coach my little ones up in, I'm fully invested in the Twin Valley Baseball Association board. I coach for the Twin Valley Basketball Association. I'm also a coach for the Twin Valley Football Association. So I'm bought in, drank the juice, happy to be here, happy to meet everyone, and look forward to further conversation.
You don't happen to have wetlands experience, do you?
Actually, believe it or not, in Westminster Township right now, I'm
Yeah.
installing 410-foot boardwalk through the DEP one of them.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we actually grew up down the street from each other.
Did you?
know it.
Oh, okay.
That might be very bad.
Okay, I think we've got a good sense, and thank you for that introduction.
So if you want, I can kind of work down from the top, John.
Yes.
Your earlier comments about the zoning hearing board is one of the first items. And that kind of encompasses solicitor and again, the open appointment. So
Okay.
I will start from the top. The consent agenda is typical. If you have any questions about any of those attachments, I'd be more than happy. But they are typical monthly attachments. And then again,
I do have a question on, for the consent agenda. If we can add that land preservation spreadsheet at least once or twice a year. This way, when discussions come up, we have that updated spreadsheet available.
with the updated website, it
Would be on
it's going to
there.
make its
Yeah,
way
we
on to there. There's going to be a whole document center. And it's going to be broken down by agency, administration, and then the various boards. So you'll be able to find agendas, and any associated public document. So that land press document will be on there, but if the board wishes to have it.
Well, as Shane knows that what happens when we get a number, when we're looking at the land preservation account, saying it's like, okay, so you have $1 million in that account, but when we have easement requests, it's like your check register where you've written checks against it, which we've done in the past with these delayed payments. So your bank account balance may be $1 million, but in reality, you have 700,000. So that's what that spreadsheet confirms, that 300,000 has been already escrowed for future payments.
So you'll also notice in the land preservation budget, we typically budget expenses of about $800,000 a year. So we put that consistently across the board. The number might be 750, I can get to that number. However, as part of the administration, we look at that we're going to have expenses. So we always put about $750,000 expense. So regardless of what the fund balance is, we're already assuming that that's going to be an expense. So those funds are always available. And again, as we spoke about in the past, we did do some investments with Pliget, but we did it quarterly, so at any point, half of the funds, or $2 million, are available every single day.
And we didn't have that available in the past, but, when, back in the day when we had 500,000 and we had a request, for 350,000, and we only had, in reality, less than 100,000 available, that caused some problems. That's why that spreadsheet shows it.
Absolutely, so that's where
Chip Jones has been watching that like a hawk every time we make a recommendation.
Yeah.
So again, I was unaware that that was not provided. I believe you got that last meeting.
We did.
Okay, so as the administrative process now works, our treasurer puts out the most updated land preservation spreadsheet, Excel sheet, 2 days before we post the agenda. So when the board members get that packet, that is a freshly posted, account-driven actual balance. So, and that does go out, I believe, till 2027, showing any payments that we're looking at having.
Is it 5-year build out?
Yeah. So,
Okay. That sounds good.
So if the board would like to have it, I can.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, because if a discussion comes up for an easement request, you know, to ensure that we have accurate numbers. Right now, that may not be a serious matter since the fund is healthy, but if we should get to that point where we should have several applications, it might be helpful.
So would the board find it acceptable if we just included it as part of the treasurer's report?
The board is input?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
Okay, this will be available.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Good.
Any other questions about the consent agenda?
No further questions.
So we'll add it to G1, which would be the new business, the list of bills and the treasurer's report. So, John, to your point, agenda item number 2 is the zoning hearing board appointments. So,
Okay, good.
I think that covered, we at least discussed the initial part that Beth Cole will remain our solicitor. She has moved over to the firm that Chip Hall had been part of, so Chip Hall has tendered his resignation, or will have by the next board meeting. But just by not appointing him in January, he does not, we don't have any zoning hearing board solicitor. So the resignation kind of is irrelevant. So to your point, John, you have to, the board has to have some discussion as who's going to fill the open appointment.
Okay. Do we want to cover that now, or do we want to?
No, so you have an open zoning hearing board appointment.
Okay.
So that's, I'm sorry, that's going to be under G2, new business. So we do have 4 zoning hearing board applications in, so there will be hearings at the end of this month, so.
And
Well,
we
we
did have,
clearly have affirmed that Hartman's firm is going to be appointed. He has those documents. He's just having trouble distributing to everyone because he's not sure what positions are where, so. I would ask that the board at least maybe have some insight to make a motion next week.
we did have Jeff Edberger here, he's a member of the zoning hearing board. He was offering his input if we needed it. I think he's already left at this point. All right, do you want to discuss that now, or do you want to save that for next week?
When you say it for next week, is it?
Okay, you're fine with us, okay. We need the tertiary representative for the Westchester County Council of Governments. I don't know if you wish to discuss that now or later.
So we made 2 appointments, primary or secondary. Tertiary means that we can have another board member or the township manager. And that's what the Westchester County COG has approved. So do I hear a motion?
Have we ever had?
Problem, of course, is supervisors. Some municipalities have had township managers attend on a regular basis because the supervisors have not been available. One of the options these meetings have been virtual meetings, so you don't have to go to the location. For the past year, it was mostly in Valley Township. But what I did when I was the president of that group, we did a rotation. We hosted it in Honeybrook Township one time. So we were asked, again, if we are interested in hosting the Council of Government meeting here in Honeybrook Township in 2023. So that's something we might want to consider. What's beneficial is it gives the representatives from these other municipalities a chance to come out here and see what Honeybrook Township looks like. Very few people may have the opportunity to step into our building. And for those who are not familiar, Council of Government is a regional consortium. We have 3 operating actively in Chester County. Across the state of Pennsylvania, there's in the neighborhood of 80 Council of Governments, which means you have the opportunity to work with other municipalities through an ordinance that you have approved, which we did. We were one of the first municipalities to join this COG and to do that. Cost effectiveness is one of the primary things. When something comes up that's going to impact this region, why shoulder that cost entirely within Honeybrook Township? Why not reach out and partner with West Brandywine and some of the other municipalities? So that's what they're there for. An example of this cooperation, Honeybrook Borough went to one of the meetings. It was discussing the veteran banners. So the representative, Charles Palmer from AdClan, said, well, we just did that project, and they gave them the assistance. And if you drive down 322, you'll now see all those banners. That's a result of participating in that COG. So there's some very good initiatives that have come out of that. All right. So do I hear
So you'll make the motion next week.
Okay, yeah.
Obviously, if the board wishes the manager to do it, I'll be more than happy to
All right.
see you for sure.
So it's fair to make that third appointment then. All right,
Go
go ahead.
Let's see.
Yeah.
We've gone through all of the engineering. We've talked about number 11 for the park and racks, and number 12 is if the board is interested in giving direction to myself and Beth to potentially seek dedication of the parkland at Foxbrook.
Have we been getting any comments on that?
Nothing. Again, this was part of a legal settlement, so this was a additional order that they had to provide this parkland space. It had just been amended.
So that'll go through the Parks and Recreation?
Well, if you want, so the start would be dedicating, so that the board would have to give approval for Beth to start looking in that process, reaching out to the homeowners association. Based upon that conversation, you need to have the dedication first to then start planning, I believe, what you would like to do. And if the board is interested, I would recommend once we have that, we can, give it to Racking Park as well to start looking into it. Again, you'll note that in our budget for this year, we did set aside some funds in case we wanted to use the landscape architect that is doing Humboldt Park. They gave us a quote to do something similar, obviously on a smaller scale. We could either walk it and give us some designs or do some community engagement, and it was anywhere from, I believe, $1,200 to $5,500. And obviously, I think if the board wanted to accept the dedication, once we know how smooth that will go, obviously I would then, like I said, put it to Racking Park and then offer them that services.
Yep.
And allow them to give some guidance back to the board whether they believe it's time to bring on a landscape architect to really kind of give them a vision of what we can utilize that spot for. So again, you can have that circle of parks. It's noted in our comp plan that we definitely do need facilities.
Yeah. Looks like we'll keep it busy.
So I just need some direction whether you want to make a motion next week to just let Beth start
Yeah.
preliminary steps. I don't know if that's going to take months or more than a year, but we have to put that step first.
Would you want to touch on that later, or would you accept it? Yeah.
Again, I'm just trying to give you information of what's in front of the board. Obviously, if the motion fails, if there's not an opposition, then we can revisit it. You also have the ability next week to table it if you don't think you're there. Obviously, the workshops are to kind of have these pre-meeting discussions to see if there's interest in moving forward. And again, just like anything, you might not have enough information, you might not believe it's the right time to undertake this with other issues potentially going in the township, or you may feel that, having Beth start the process and maybe coming back with a timeline and getting those feelers back can maybe give us some better understanding of what the process could get. This is just asking if you would like Beth to start looking into it, not actual application of that.
All right. I think that covers what we have for next week.
Security releases. The last thing, number 16, is our yearly, we have to put out for bid, lawn painting, seal coating. Last year, the road department actually kind of multi-bidded out the Beaver Dam paving project, so we had too many subcontractors to actually handle. Don has seen the light, and this year our intent is just to do a single bid in place for the liquid fuels and the associated general funds we have set aside, probably doing about 2 to 3 miles continuing on Beaver Dam. So this year we asked that we did it entirely as a sole, single contract, and the only thing that we would do is use our co-stars pricing to pay for the asphalt. So I'm just asking to, our traditional line painting, seal coat, and then allow us to, when the time comes, put out our single or $10 fuel.
Okay.
And that's a standard.
All right. I guess that's your code then?
That's all for next week's agenda. You know, the associated documents are 222 pages long. That's the order. That's to keep you open.
Oh, yeah. Big warrant. All right, at this point, that's the, agenda. Okay, other business that we have? I don't see anything on our agenda for other business. Open forum. Yes, please.
Referring to the Ryan Higgins variance,
Yes.
I understand what Mike is saying. However, you know, there must be something else they can't comply with because they could have withdrawn their application and resubmitted under the current ordinance.
Yeah.
So there's clearly something that they can't comply with, or they would have done that. They're asking for a variance for 83 lots.
Yeah.
83 lots. That's 83 potential applications that could come into the township, costing the township, staff, and consultants, also, you know, the zoning hearing board, time, and I just think that's ridiculous. They don't have a hardship. Their hardship is marketing. That's not a
Yeah.
hardship.
Yeah.
And it, you know, there's just no reason for that. If they want to come in, withdraw their application and submit under the new ordinance. They must need another variance, or they would have done that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I understand remaining neutral, but disagree on that because 83 possible variants or more is a lot.
I did ask questions, and listening to that, I wasn't sure what's going on, but I appreciate what.
What they're saying is,
Yeah.
is that if you want to, so in our ordinance, a deck, a patio needs to remain 15 feet from their property
Yeah.
lines. So if they are encroaching in the 25-foot setback, that leaves 10 feet, which everyone knows 10 feet is not very much, space to
Yeah.
do something. That's not to say, and what happens, I mean, these houses are gonna be $400,000 or $500,000.
Yeah.
So what happens if my parents need to move in with me because I'm gonna put an in-law suite? Well, guess what, you need a variance for that. You can't even, there's no room for that at all. And I don't care what anybody says, when you buy a single-family home, there is an expectation that you should be able to do things on your property. You should be able to put a patio, a deck, a shed, whatever.
Mhm.
And this is gonna create work for the township.
Yeah.
And I just don't agree with that. When there's no hardship, marketing is not a hardship.
Yeah.
Rework your plan, or guess what? Withdraw, resubmit. But clearly, they must need variance for other things, or they would have done.
I did see the website, and it does tell us that what a wonderful location. You're 3 minutes to 322. It doesn't tell you the next line, which would be, but it's 10 minutes to get on to 322.
So that is why the planning commission took that position.
Yeah.
So, you know, I get what Mike's saying, but disagree.
Okay.
83 variances is a lot. So that's my opinion on that.
All right.
As far as the vacancies for zoning hearing board,
Mhm.
I mean, my personal opinion is, if you're gonna put people on committees, if you're gonna have an EAC, whatever committee, whether it be planning commission, parks and rec, whatever, my personal opinion is, people that won't get on these boards should have experience in those things. You can't put Joe Schmo homeowner on a zoning hearing board. They don't understand what the rules, regulations are, what you can and can approve variance for. I know that there's a solicitor there that guides them, but, you know, you shouldn't be on a planning commission if you don't know anything about planning or reading plans. You should, I just don't, and an EAC especially, nobody should be on that board that is not experienced in environmental work. Whether it be their job, whether they have knowledge about it, but just putting people on boards is wrong.
Yeah.
People should have some type of criteria that would allow them to be put on the board as far as knowing, whether it be their job, whatever, experience, knowledge.
In recent years, we're seeing more people stepping up, which is good because it allows us to be selective. In the past, as you know, we'd have open positions that we just couldn't fill. The positive thing is we're seeing residents stepping up that we didn't see in the past.
Because one or two little words mean a big thing. I hear a lot of people say, oh, well, that's approved. No, it's not approved. I hear people say, oh, it's a conditional use. No, it's a special exception. That makes a big deal. That's a big deal. But changing one or two little words makes a whole big difference for different things that you're talking about. So that's why, you have to know what you're doing and what you're talking about when you're on these things, because people, you can get confused if you're, not in this business.
Yeah.
So that's just interesting.
I think that's well said, Melissa.
Okay.
Okay. Karen, you were first?
No.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm sorry, we know Melissa, but we do know most of the people in the audience, but just for the benefit of people who may not know who you are, just if you could give your name.
Valerie Schultz. Quick question. I know at the Planning Commission workshop a few weeks ago, there was a recommendation that the township would take ownership for this 36-acre recreational area. Now we're talking about building another one at Foxbrook, and Humble Park is in need of an update. I think we need to address the elephant in the room of where this funding is coming from. We need to know where is the proposed funding coming from right now, and whether or not our taxes are going to have to be increased in order to pay for all of these proposed parks. Because we can't just keep asking Parks and Recreation to spend all of this time and energy on coming up with these great ideas if we have no funding.
Right. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Karen, Public Works. I just have a question as far as the environmental committee. Why are, you guys so set against it when I think it is something that a lot of the municipalities around the, township has it or are working with it? I mean, you go to a doctor and you don't like what they say, you want a second opinion. I would like to have, more than one person or, tell me what my environment is like. You know what I mean? I don't know where everybody lives. I live by these pipelines. I can blow up at any time. And I really don't want to, but it's always, it's true. It's you two against him, and I don't understand. It's environmental. What is the big deal?
Well, to answer your question, I was figuring on that myself, that I find that many of the township supervisors that I've come into contact with don't understand a lot of the environmental laws, regulations, the policies that, would impact, some of the decisions that are being made. So the burden on the supervisor, we can't learn everything. So we do rely on input. What Melissa's clarifying is we want to make sure that the people on the committee are giving good advice, which is something that if we get advice and it's just going to steer us in the wrong direction, that will not be beneficial as well.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but my disagreement is the constant, well, why do we have to have this? Is this really needed to be? We already have this going on. Why do we have to do this? All the other townships and, municipalities around here either have one or are working on getting one. We are the only ones that probably in the area that don't have anything like this. We need this.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amy Arvidas. I totally agree with Melissa too, that people need to be qualified for a committee like that. But it does seem like, just from listening to what the Ann It would have been nice to have a set of fresh eyes, because it's a big ask for you guys to know all of that. To have a set of fresh eyes that could have been like, well, you can request this from the developer. I mean, because we didn't know. And I think from one of the last meetings I was at, Paul Heidig said something about the township can walk through an area and declare it a floodplain or a flood zone area. And we didn't know about that either. And the solicitor had said that two of those, some of those items were just missed.
Yeah.
So I think in the EAC, if the people were qualified for it, would just be, a set of fresh eyes.
But it is difficult to find people with qualifications. Most of them are selling their services and they're willing to do it for free. But I do find that throughout the municipality we're overlooking, there's a lot of people who have some knowledge and experience and it's not being utilized. And Shane can, when we started the Land Preservation Committee, there's not one person on that committee in 2006 knew anything about land preservation or anything along that line. What we did, and this is where I push for Brandon Wine Conservancy, to have an education program in place so that we would have different topics each month in addition to the business of the committee. We would discuss financing, representatives from banks coming in and discussing, how a bond issue would work and things like that. So, the problem, of course, is getting people having qualifications. We never get started. You get people who may have to get up to speed over a period of time. They have the interest, they have the need, the desire to learn. The township does pay for education. For what I did is I didn't get anything on zoning, so I went out and attended a 2-day session. That's how I met John Snook and other people from Brandywine Conservancy, and that led to one thing to another. But you do have to have people who are going to do more than just show up for a meeting, and that's kind of hard for the board to discern. Just looking at a person who's just going to say, "Yeah, I'm really interested in this." By the end of the year, they made 2 meetings. So that's the challenge.
Right, but it's open, but just to shut it down
Yeah.
when it's just an idea, and it's obviously there are people in this township that know.
I have meeting invitations from numerous groups right now. The other night I attended a call at 6 o'clock while I'm eating dinner, and if we had someone, a resident who could step in and help us, attend some of those meetings, that would be helpful. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Charles Hannah. I'd like to take it back to the beginning of the night with the police.
Yes, go ahead.
And we're talking about spending money for another road crew guy, and another dump truck, and another skid steer, and another park over here, and another park over here. How about we do nothing until we can put some policing in the area before we have any of that stuff? I mean, we have a park, and they ride through it. Honeybrook Borough rides through our park to make sure it's safe.
Yes.
I mean, this has been a long time coming. We're spending all this money on all these other projects and stuff, and that should be our sole focus for right now.
Well, Chief Ely was relaying that same information that Chief Wilson was telling me. So he's retired a few years, and he was telling me what was going on a few years ago, comparable to what we heard tonight. So yes, we need to step up in that area.
It just does make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, that should be like our #1 need.
Yeah.
I had an issue with the park last summer, and I had to call the state police, and you know what? I went home, and 3 hours later, he returned my call, and he apologized for it. Super nice.
Yeah.
But they can't, I don't understand why that's not more of a priority.
And at some point, the borough's gonna get tired of Calvin spending any time that he's spending here because they're paying for it.
They just lost $1,000 from their park and recreation committee, take it from that budget to go for the budget, for the salary for the part-time officer, or for their next officer.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have
Yes.
one more. Just a curiosity. A couple weeks ago, Some lady stopped across the street at my home and got out and took pictures of my home. Okay? The guy that is, I think it's JMD Construction, is directly across from my house.
Yeah.
And he is, the guy that works there is a friend of mine. And he went out and asked the lady what she was doing. And she said, oh, I'm just taking pictures. And she took pictures of my home, my property. This had nothing to do with appraisals or anything like that. So he said, I'm taking pictures too, and took pictures of the car and the license plate. And he asked her, what can I help you with? And she said, nothing, I'm just doing a drive-by. A drive-by what?
Yeah.
Is it a drive-by shooting? You know, I called the state police. I couldn't do anything because she was not on my property, so she wasn't trespassing. You know, but I don't want people stopping at my house taking pictures of my land and my home.
We can, verify that for you. I mean, maybe if we had a police department that would be driving by and might be able to assist, but I know from a person who has a business where the insurance companies go and insure these homes, and they don't have pictures of the property, so they send people out to take pictures of properties so that they know what they're insuring. Some of the insurance companies will contract people to do that, but I'm just guessing. So I'm sorry to hear that you had that incident, but yeah, I don't think we can help on that.
So I can put a no trespassing sign, including, and put on there no trespassing, including no photos of my own.
I don't think I respect that. Yeah. Thank you, Karen. I get one more question.
Once I wanted to mention, thanks for bringing the young lady Ann on, because that was very helpful, and I think you would be foolish if you do not involve her in some way, shape, or form in this township. But getting back to the police thing, I just want to give you, for instance, we have 8,000 people in the town. Ryan Home's going to add about 450 to 500 people, because everybody there's got 3 kids. Everybody. And I'm not even getting into trailer parks. And 1,000 people plus at the DR Horton one. We're talking about taking the town from 8,000 to 10,000, maybe even more, depending what you do with the trailer parks. Yeah. With no police force, that's almost foolish, because now, like, for example, not this Saturday, Saturday before, I'm standing in front of my house, I'm standing inside my house, having a drink of Diet Pepsi. I'm seeing 2 kids walking by, I think it's the neighborhood kids. No, walking very slowly, checking out each house, being followed by a white car with tinted windows, very slowly. I'm right below the Ryan development. I don't know these kids, I just said, that's strange. In fact, I thought to myself, with the car, I would hate to be a cop approaching that car because those windows were black. I hear they did the same thing at Ryan Homes, and then that evening, they broke into one. Or somebody broke into one. It's very coincidental. Now today, I'm walking through the same neighborhood. I know who our kids are in the neighborhood. We don't have hardly any kids anymore. I got a kid walking through the neighborhood looking at houses again. I asked him this morning, what are you doing? He rents. You know, there's no one to call. When these ladies got home to their house Saturday night and it was broken into, and they went through the entire house, it was turned upside down. They lost lots of money, they lost lots of things. It took 45 minutes for the troopers to get there. Yeah. This is not a good situation. What if they came home and there was somebody in the house? You know, to continue to go along and say a township of 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 can get along without a police force is foolish. You're going to have to do that. And that's more important than putting a park here or putting a park there. This is people's lives, and their properties, and their livelihoods. So I would really like to hear you guys further that conversation and not rely on the borough. Because as he said, he's not coming all the way out to Ryan Homes. That's the edge. That's almost West Nancy. He's coming a few blocks here, a few miles here, a few miles there. He's not coming out to that. The state trooper said we'll get there. When we get there, it's 45 minutes later. There's 2 women alone in their house, scared to death. You got to start. If we're going to keep letting people bring in housing and things like that, you got to reconsider this.
Thank you.
But thank you for bringing it in.
Thank you. Anything else before we adjourn? I think that should do it. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. We have upcoming meetings, so we have February 8th, Board of Supervisors regular meeting at 7 p.m. And then we have February,
It's just, I said to him, I think 5 years, to be more trained. Just little